Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Hit Season. Today's guest is awesome. This guy, most likely you haven't seen him, but you've certainly heard him. He is the chief head engineer, producer, owner of one of the larger cheer music companies here in the United States. You've heard his work across the whole country. If you have been to a cheer competition, I want to welcome to the Hit Season, Alex from Twisted Cutz. What's up, Alex?
What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you having me on. And that was quite the intro.
Oh, like listen, you have to have a good intro for the work that you do. So
appreciate that.
Tell everybody what you do. Like, how did you get into cheer music? Where did it all begin for Alex?
I mean, we can go all the way back to where I started with cheerleading back in high school. So the way I kind of got into the industry, like I grew up playing different sports my entire life. So baseball was my main sport. I was a big hockey family, golf as well, a lot of the different sports like that. And then during my sophomore year in high school, I went to a high school, Cherry Hill High School East in New Jersey. I grew up in a town called Cherry Hill. It's about 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia on the Jersey side of the bridge. And I think it was during our Spirit Week. So during Spirit Week, we make floats that go around like the football track at our homecoming game. And I hopped into a conversation, like mid-conversation, and one of my friends was talking to one of the cheerleaders and talking about how he would totally be open to do cheerleading. And I thought he meant like kind of like a joke, kind of like dressing up in skirts and cheering on for. We have something called a power puff game, where the girls do like a flag football game and the guys, you know, they root them on, they coach them and stuff like that. And I thought he meant that. I thought he meant like, hey, dress up in a skirt, pom-poms, like kind of just jokingly. I was like, oh, yeah, I'll totally do that. I'll totally join you with that. Little did I know, my one friend, I think it was Jill at the time. They were going through a transition on the cheer team where they brought in big UCA coaches. So they had Coach Marguerite McCarthy and Ken McCarthy. They were big UCA instructors and big on that. And they were trying to transition our program to co-ed. So there was actually an outreach to a bunch of guys to try to get them to cheer. So the very next day in school, I was bombarded by the entire cheer team. Like, hey, we heard you want to cheer. And I was like, I feel as if I got this all wrong and that we were talking about something completely different. But they persisted. They were very persistent with it. And as a young guy, you know, having a bunch of cheerleaders come up to you at high school, it's like, all right, this isn't the worst case scenario. So they actually ended up recruiting like 6 of us, and they wanted us to come check out our practice. And we were still a little weary about it. We were like, we've never heard of this before, never heard of guys cheerleading. But then the coach's husband, Ken McCarthy, who was assistant coach, walked through the door. It was like a Saturday morning practice. And this dude was a brick house. Like, you know how some of these college male cheerleaders are. They're huge, like just could barely fit through the door. He was so jacked. And then he started tossing up, doing co-ed stunting. And then we were like, okay, this is kind of cool. This is a lot different than what we thought about it could be. And then, you know, a bunch of us joined the team that year. And kind of the rest is history. Kind of for the rest of the year, or for the rest of my high school career, we were a co-ed team, and a few more years after that, until the coaches left, they were co-ed. And that's how it all kind of got started, kind of as a joke. And, you know, fast forward 20 some years, we're here today, and it's kind of crazy how that kind of shaped my cheer career. But to then dive into kind of the process on how I got into cheer music, right out of high school, I started coaching tumbling at a gym in New Jersey called TNT Elite. So they had an all-star program, but they were primarily a gymnastics and tumbling gym where we trained like all the high schools, all the rec teams, they're tumbling, and they would practice at our facility. And we had a guy there, his name was Mike O'Neill, was a good friend of mine back in the day. And he was the music guy at the gym. So he understood how to make cheer music. He understood how to use the programs. He had all the sound banks back in the day. And as the years went on, he was kind of teaching me how to use these things. He was like, I would stay overnight at the gym and just play with the computer, play with the programs, learn the ropes about it, and just understand it. And then there were some unfortunate situations where he had to leave the gym, so he was no longer working there. This was probably a few years after that. So probably like when I was like 21, 22-ish. And in the middle of the season, so part of the package when you went to TNT, if you were like a rec team or a high school, you would be able to get an hour of tumbling, an hour of practice, and then you get free custom music. Quite a deal.
What a deal.
Back in the day. Right?
Goodness.
Right?
I didn't know deals were out there in cheer.
Oh yeah. Back in the day, that was quite but hey, every single team in the area was coming to TNT at that point in time. So
I can imagine why.
Right.
Yeah. But when Mike left, teams still needed music. So our owner, Todd, came to me and was like, you kind of know how to use these programs, right? I was like, kind of. I get the understanding. I can piece together things. And he was like, can you make music for the teams that are booked with us that need music? And I was like, I mean, I'll do it. Like, I'll do my best. And that's where it all started. So there was a rec team. There was a township called Marlton in New Jersey where I actually live now. And that was the very first cheer mix. They needed like music the next week. That night I went home. I talked to the coach.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
So not only are you in the job, in the hot seat, but it's like, hey, by the way, next week we need it. We were like in the thick of it. And back then, like, we can talk about what music was like back then versus how it is now, because putting together a certain mix, in the late 2000s was a little bit easier than what the teams expect now as far as how custom it needs to be, how many different artists need to be in the mix. So like back then, I wasn't doing any voiceovers myself. There was no voiceovers really in the music. It was just kind of blending songs together, adding sound effects. So like being able to do that quickly is a little bit easier than having to plan out themes and record and write and all these different things. But that's basically where it started. And it kind of grew. Like I was just doing all the teams at the gym, and then just word of mouth would happen where, a team that doesn't go to TNT might hear, hey, you can go to this guy named Alex and he'll do your music. So like the New Jersey, the tri-state area. So New Jersey, a little bit into Pennsylvania and New York. I was like really doing a lot of teams in there. And I think it was like a year or two after that, we were also running some competitions, some local competitions. And there was one called Rumble at Rutgers. So Rutgers University in New Jersey, they have two campuses. They have one in New Brunswick and they have one in Camden, New Jersey. And we would run a big local competition in Camden, New Jersey. And my other buddy, Mike, who was the director at TNT at the time, he was like, hey, we're making programs for the competition. Let's advertise your music. And I was like, all right, how do we do that? And he was like, well, first we have to come up with a name. I was like, all right. So we sat there for 5 minutes in the office, just kind of like looking down, looking around, like tossing names out. And Mike was like, what about Twisted Cutz? And I was like, done. That works. Wow. The best ideas come in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah. And I mean, looking back, like, maybe from like a business standpoint, maybe I would name the company something to do with cheerleading. Something to do with the actual industry, like maybe that'd be easier to find me online or something like that. But it's worked out so far. And we, he made a little logo. We popped it on the program, and that's where Twisted Cutz was technically born. And that was like that was like 2007, 2008 timeframe. And from there, like I was doing a lot of local stuff. I was working with a company called Cheer Tech. They're now known as Spirit Brands. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that competition company. Yeah.
We are familiar.
So,
yes, we are.
All right.
They are very prominent in the New Jersey area.
Yes. So it was Cheer Tech back in the day. They then bought the company that we started called ECC. And then they eventually, I think they picked up a couple other companies like Mid-Atlantic, and they turned into Spirit Brands. So I was doing a lot of their camps and choreography mixes for them. So that's kind of like got me a little more branched out. But the big turning point, because I was really only doing mainly like high school recreational teams, like township teams.
Really different from All-Star.
Oh, yeah.
100%. And then there's So I went to Cherry Hill High School East, and then there's a west side of Cherry Hill. And the coach for Cherry Hill West, her name was Shelby Smith. She was a great friend of mine. Her kids tumbled at TNT for a long time. And she had a friend who was their choreographer, and his name was Ben Lear. And Ben was looking for a music guy. So Ben, he's a phenomenal choreographer, phenomenal dude. I'm trying to think of like he was a Top Gun athlete. He's from New Jersey. And basically Shelby was like, hey, my buddy Ben needs a music guy. He's like a great choreographer. Send him your information right now. Like Shelby was like, get in touch with them right now. So I shoot Ben like an email, and he hit me back up and he threw some mixes at me. I think the first mixes he sent me were some Australian teams. So like there's this little guy from Jersey just doing local rec teams, and all of a sudden I have 20 teams in Australia in All-Star. I'm like, oh, this is different. This is branching out way farther than I've ever been. The sound has to be adjusted. Then Ben and I we connected really well, and we had a really good business relationship and friendship, and he just taught the All-Star world. So without Ben, that gap or that bridge wouldn't have been crossed for probably a little bit while longer. And he really catapulted me into the All-Star industry. And that's where I started to really grow outside of New Jersey. So I went into the Midwest with Michigan and Ohio, down in Florida, over to Texas. And we're still great friends today. We still work together in a lot of different projects today, but that's really kind of the evolution of my company. And then ever since then, that kind of was like the turning point where I was running the cheer program at TNT, and then I was building Twisted Cutz. And once I started getting connected with Ben, it started to take off. Twisted Cutz started to take off. And it was a lot of hard work, a lot of time putting into that. And then they were kind of like directing, coaching, and TNT, and then doing the music full time were really clashing. So I was either losing days at TNT to catch up on music, or losing days on music to be at TNT. And it really just was not a good combination at that point in time. So in 2013, I took the dive to go full time into Twisted Cutz. And ever since then, it's been full-time music for me. And I guess now we're here today.
That's amazing. I love how, so did you have a music background at all? Or did you really just kind of learn as you went and as you grew?
So a little bit of both. So I grew up, like I play certain instruments, play guitar. So I had like no formal music background, like not reading music, not music theory or anything like that, but just understanding just simple dynamics of music. And I grew up more with a background, like I grew up through the late 90s, early 2000s. So like I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, like the nu metal ages and like the pop punk ages. That's what I grew up on. So I played in a pop punk band.
I have
so
to
I was
ask
really
you this
big.
because you're from New Jersey.
Yes.
Saves the Day.
Saves the Day is one of the best bands out there. So they're great, man.
I knew it.
And like that. So you're a Saves the Day kind of guy?
Yeah. So like I actually grew up just north of you in the better part of the country, which is New England.
Oh, okay.
We always used to joke with people in Jersey and in New York. We'd be like, yeah, we're from Boston. It's so much better. But I was in the same scene. So I was in all the hardcore scenes. So I graduated in 2004. So leading up.
Same year as me.
Oh, okay. So
we're both 2004. Amazing.
Yeah. So the best era of music, hands down.
Easily.
And so I learned how to play guitar at 12 and started my own bands. I'll never forget this. I had a little Zoom drum machine because I could never find people to play with. So I would pre-program my drum machine and I would just go play like gigs by myself, and I just would write music and record. That was back in the day when you remember the Tascam 5-track recorder, the 4-track recorder? Remember
I don't even remember that.
It was blue, and you put a cassette tape in it, and it only had 4 inputs on it, and it sounded like hot garbage, but it was the thing to do. And so I had
like,
those.
we only had those options back in the day.
We didn't. And so, I was heavily into the music scene, playing in a lot of bands. I was playing in a lot of hardcore bands. That was kind of more my scene, and then played in a lot of like pop punk bands. And then when I graduated high school, I decided to stop playing as much. I did play some like acoustic stuff. Like I signed a small label deal here in South Carolina, and we toured that out for like a year or two. But I was mostly guitar teching and tour managing for a couple bands in the Northeast. And so when I moved to North Carolina, I was flying to Boston, flying to New York for like all these showcases and all this stuff. And then I'll never forget, we were at the Canal Room, which you probably know, in New York, and we were doing a showcase for well, he was Puff Daddy back then, and that goes to show my age. But It was for him and a bunch of others. It was more of like a pop rock band, I guess you could say. But they were looking to take this band on Aerosmith's world tour. They were going to be the opening act for them. So we were doing some showcase stuff up there, and it was the middle of winter, and it was so cold, and I had gotten the band all together. We got off set. I had everything packed up. I was getting everything ready to go back to the bus, and I'm laying there, and my wife now, we were just dating during that time, and I wrote to her and I said, I am over this weather. I am done here. And that was the last show that I did. But yeah, it's a small world with the music industry. I bet you we know probably some of the same people.
Oh yeah, there's a chance, but that whole scene, like I was into a lot of the harder stuff. So like my favorite band growing up was Korn, and like I was big into like the new metal, like Limp Bizkit, Deftones, Cold Chamber,
Mudvayne.
Mudvayne was wild, man. Those guys were nuts. But Slipknot was one of my favorite bands. Yep. So like they were great. And then it's funny, my first cassette tape. So this is again showing our age. So my first album was on cassette, and I was in 5th grade, and I got a call from the principal because I got like 100 on my reading test. So my mom was like, "All right, I'm gonna get my son a gift." And there was this one song on the radio that I loved, and I always like wanted my mom to stop with the channels whenever it came on, and it was Basket Case by Green Day. And she went out and she got the album Dookie for me in 5th grade. And that was my first album ever. And I played it till it broke. And if she knew what the lyrics were at the time, maybe wouldn't have bought it, that album from 5th grade. But yeah, that just projected me into rock and then into some of the heavier stuff. Then like I mellowed out later on with more like Blink-182, Newfound Glory, Saves the Day, the Ataris, and all the whole pop punk scene. But I really do think that influenced my sound because, you know, my sound is much more along the lines of aggressive. You get this big, loud crowd vocals that I do. And that was influenced by a band called Set Your Goals. Yep. I don't know if you ever heard them. Yeah, they're like happy hardcore. And I was listening to their album one day, and they were doing these real heavy drops into breakdowns, and they would do these big crowd shouts. And I was like, that would sound really cool in cheer music. So I kind of taught, I had an engineer kind of teach me how to do that myself. So a lot of the crowd shouts that you'll hear, like in ATA's music or when they were a rock star, like you'll hear like it sounds like 10 people shouting, but it's just like me in different forms. But that was all influenced from literally pop punk, hardcore style. Like Newfound Glory does a lot of those crowd shouts and stuff like that. So it's funny how that all worked out. But to Erica, to go back to your question, there was no formal training. And it's kind of funny. There's producers that have a lot of understanding beforehand of music production, and a lot of producers kind of learned along the way. And I was more learning along the way of how to use these programs. I was not an audio engineer at all. You had to refine your ears along the way, understand different terminology like EQ and compression. And yeah, there was no formal training, but when I was managed for a few years, starting in I think 2015 or 16, company New Level Music, a big company out in the music world, and I was managed by them. I signed like a management deal with them for a few years, and there's a guy on their team. His name is Anthony Arasi. The best dude in the world, and he's their head engineer over at New Level Music. And he was the head engineer with Cheer Music Pro beforehand, and still is. But he basically really taught me a lot of the inner workings behind actual like music production. So he got me set up with different programs and understanding the plugins and the effects and how to work everything. And he really, like, my sound today and the audio quality today, which is still plenty of room for improvement, but night and day from back before New Level Music, is attributed to him. So like understanding how to properly record, how to understand how to properly render things, shift which program, like he did a pivotal part in that.
So let's dive into that. So first off, I have to make a mention. I think that's amazing that you have pop punk influence in this cheer, because it's so funny when we think about stuff like that, because people probably wouldn't notice that. But now I'm going to be listening, because we're going to Can-Am this weekend. I'm going to be listening now for those subtle hints and seeing where I can figure it out. But let's talk about the music. So you've talked about how you got here and the people who helped you along the way and got you there. So let's sit down and let's talk about, say I'm a program owner and I come to you and I'm like, Alex, I've got, for the sake of conversation, I've got a team, an all-star team this year, and I need music. How does that conversation start? And guide us through that process. Like, do I tell you or do I have to send you things? How does that look? What does that conversation look like between a product owner, a program owner, and you?
And what questions do you ask to get the best result for both of you?
Yeah, these are great questions. So I'll start at like the very beginning of the process, because I think starting there, I can then loop in a question later on that a lot of programs always have, or a lot of parents always have, which could help with that too. But so this time of year, so Twisted Cutz opens booking around February. So we've been offering booking for about a month and a half now. And basically a coach or a program will come to us, hey, we want to reserve time slots, or okay, let's start it over. So say it's a coach that I've never worked with. We are looking to use Twisted Cutz for cheer music this year. Okay, perfect. So we're booking now, and what we do something called advanced booking. So we basically allow teams to put a deposit down now for dates later on in the season, like say in July, August, September, October, or November. So a lot of times, and it all depends on their choreography dates. It all depends on different factors, but we say, okay, how many teams are you thinking? And they'll say like around 5 teams, and then as far as Twisted Cutz goes, we allow them to adjust after team placements. So a team can estimate, hey, we're going to need 5 mixes. We offer different packages. So let's talk about what package would suit you guys the best, what packages would suit each team the best. A lot of times we'll offer, like a lot of the programs that have more advanced teams will get more of the higher custom mixes, and then younger, more novice teams that don't need anything crazy, they'll get the more basic packages and they'll save money there, and it works out. But they'll reserve the time slots. So basically I'll use ATA Lake Norman, for example. Their choreography, it seems to be later in the season, so they'll book some later dates, toward October, November, and we block those off. So that's when the actual production dates are of when we're putting the mixes together. So we basically discuss how many teams, what types of packages you guys need, and we book it. And then around June, right after team placements happen, we finalize the orders. So say a team books 10 mixes, but they only need 9. Then we shift it around and we figure out, okay, cool, we don't need this mix. We shift around like the deposits so that it goes to their final payments and stuff like that. But around middle of June, once we have the finalized order, we go over something called team information details. And basically it's like we have a questionnaire that goes out that's like, hey, okay, we need this for each team. We need the team name. We need like colors, like some of the basic stuff. Like, so this is like bigger with high school, like your team, like colors, things like that. So basically team name, especially with All-Star, because team names are always changing each year. So we need to know the name that's going to each package. if any uniform colors have changed, we ask that. The division, so what age group, if they're all girl, they're co-ed, if they're level 4 or 5 or below, things like that. And then the most important question we actually ask is there a theme that you guys are requesting? So a lot of people come up with all different themes. ATA isn't, in previous years, hasn't really been big on themes, but we do theme the mix, as you guys hear, around the team name. Like sometimes we'll get themes that are completely different. So we'll get a doctor theme or a baseball theme or a Barbie theme or Mean Girls theme. So in the middle of June, we collect all the information from all the teams. And that's when the real work begins. So the reason why we have to ask that so early, so we'll get ATA's information in June, but their production dates aren't until November. But we have everyone's information coming in then. That's when our team goes to work. So basically, we have spreadsheets that have everybody's team, all the different artists that we have, like all the information they give us goes onto a spreadsheet, and we start coming up with the ideas for those mixes. So between June and August, we're doing nonstop work with filling out spreadsheets as to, okay, this team, ATA voltage. So it's a full original. So we need not like 9 to 10 vocalists, different vocalists on there. And then each vocalist, I have to figure out, hey, write about this, you write about this, you write about that. And then basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give the artist different things to write about. Otherwise, they're all going to write about the same stuff. So you'll hear like because they, if I'm just like, hey, ATA Lake Norman voltage, they'll all be like, we're going to shock you. We're going to, you're going to feel the voltage. But like, I'll tell some artists, hey, let's write about more about, the ATA LKN, and we'll focus more on electricity, and then this one's more on shock, and then this one's more like still in the same realm of everything, but like different verbiage, different terms, so that different sections, we're not saying the same words over and over again. And it's like, hey, don't say the team name, but you can say the program name, or this artist, don't say the program name, but you can say the team name. And it's countless hours of brainstorming to then get all this information to our artists for them to record, record. And over the next few months, our team is just basically getting all the content ready. So all the musical content is getting ready. So as the months go on, basically by the time each production date arrives, so say ATA, the November 1st is I'm just throwing a date out there, is that like they're submitting their information November 1st. Then those weeks, we have to make sure all the musical content is produced and ready to go that day. So all the months leading up to it, we're doing that over and over again for a bunch of mixes. So that's where like a lot of like the real work begins. But that's basically like, those are the questions. Just like, hey, we need to know your team information. Let us know if there's like any inside jokes, any hashtags that you guys want, any specific like quotes that you guys have. For example, believe the hype. That's a big one that we use with ATA every year. And we try to like mix it in like differently. So some songs might say it, some voiceovers might say it. Some we do like kind of like these robotic auto-generated type voiceovers that we've been using now that might say it. And we try to just each year just try to like reinvent it little by little. But yeah, just as much information that we can get early on, and then we spend all the time throughout the summer just creating content. And I'm trying to remember if there was another question there, but
No, I'd love to know like how, you're talking about the words and the lyrics. How do you match, we see some routines that have the fun sound effects as the baskets fly. And is that also kind of a part of this whole process? Or are you doing that, are you starting all of it and then seeing the video of it and then adding in additional things as you see the choreography?
Yeah, so the choreography is the wild card in all of this. So basically, anyone who's familiar with like similar sports, like say dance or gymnastics and dance music, the music comes first. and then they choreograph to the music. Cheer, it's reversed. And that's where I think we kind of coined a term for Twisted Cutz where it's more than just a mix, because that's where a lot of the real magic ends up happening is, we could slap together songs and our own content, just kind of like splice it together, any which way we want. Yeah. And in some cases, depending on the package, that is the case. So for a tiny one team, they don't need anything crazy. And a lot of times it's not beneficial because, if you're not just kind of keeping a consistent pace and you're stopping and they're going to lose count. So we have packages where it's more suited to them, where it is a little bit more cookie cutter, a little bit more simpler for them to just keep up with. But then you get to the level 3s, 4s, and 5s of these advanced teams. And then there's, basically we have the content now. So we have all the pieces to the puzzle for the most part, because there are things like after we see the choreography, I might hit up one of my artists and be like, ooh, you know what? Let's change this, and I've been blessed. I have some really good artists that can come in clutch like overnight or within a couple of days, and we'll change stuff there. But that's where, so I rely a lot on my team of artists and writers and people who do that for like the the creative side. But then once we open the file, we see the video, we see the account sheets, that's where it's really my time to make this routine come to life with the content.
That's where you put like the soul into it.
Yeah, that's where the structure comes in. So a lot of time is spent figuring out, okay, so we had an idea as to where this song is going to be used, or this voiceover is going to be used. This might have been a really good jump one. This might have been a really good pyramid one. And then you'll look and you'll start, basically what happens is I load all the content in, all the song content. So you have the vocals or the instrumentals or both. And then it's really just starting to shift it around and playing around with it and being like, okay, I've identified 4 or 5 really important parts. And I kind of want to build the routines around those sections. And you start plugging and playing with it. So it's like, all right, so I'm looking at the video, we're watching it through. And then there's a really big part where they are transitioning and then they do this really cool choreography and it builds right to this really big hit where they do a full up and the entire team hits. I need that part to be important. I need that part to shine. I need that part. It can't just be, a song starts 3 8 counts before and then I put a spin laser right there. Like, no, that's not going to do anything to get anyone off their feet, to get the kids excited, to get the coaches excited, to get the parents excited, to get the judges excited. So that's where a lot of like the time is spent shifting and just placing things. So like to kind of dive a little bit more into my process, it's a little counterintuitive to like a lot of producers don't do it this way, but I like to really shift the songs and acapellas around first, because I really want these lyrics to lead up to here. I really want these lyrics to start here, and so on. And so I've kind of shifted around there to where I think it's like I map it out from the song standpoint, and then I start to build the kicks and the drums, and then the instrumentals, and then the sound effects in last. But yeah, basically what happens is we have all the content, we see the video that they submit, and for anyone watching, what happens is a team records their routine for video, and they send it to me. And then I upload it into our program, and I can mix live and watch it as I'm going along with it. But yeah, no, we like I focus a lot of time on making sure that it's structured to a point to where so much is highlighted as possible from a choreography standpoint, to get everyone excited, to get everyone pumped up, and to really just bring the routine to life.
It sounds really familiar to like my process with video, but I'm the opposite, right? So you start off with audio and kind of figure it out to go to video. And I start out with video, but when you were talking about that, I resonated because I bring in all those pieces as well. So I typically will record. My process has changed this year from last year. I'm just trying to refine it a little bit easier, right? Because I leave a cheer comp and I've got, almost half a terabyte worth of data that I've recorded because I've got so much. So now what I do is, because I know these routines pretty much inside and out, I know where all the hot spots are, right? So people don't want to watch the transitions. They want to watch the flyers and the bases and, the stunts. They want to watch all the fancy tumbling, the jumps, and then the dance at the end. We're good. And then they want to see everybody come out on stage. So I typically will follow around, but then when I get back home into my editing suite, I'll chop everything up. I'll go back through and I'll be like, okay, this is what I want here for the jumps. This is blah, blah, blah. And then once I put that sequence together, then I bring music in and then I refine. So it's kind of like an opposite of what you do, of what I do, because then I have to sit for what feels like ages sometimes into my music catalog to find it has to be perfect. And with me having a music background as well, like to your point, I don't want it to just feel like this. Like I want to rise it up, and if they go up and they hit a killer heel stretch, like high to low, I want it to just hit with the music and really build that momentum, but also build that emotional attachment to it. And it's funny, like I'll create something and the music is just getting me hung up. Like for instance, I've been working on this video. Poor Kai, one of our coaches, he's a huge fan of the Maryland Twisters. And we saw them at Cheersport and I recorded them, and I've been working on that video literally off and on for like 3 weeks now. The video is done. I can't find music that does it justice. And are you familiar with Maryland Twisters? You probably are, because you're up in that area. So F5. So their whole thing is 5, 6, 7, 8, F5 or die. It's a bit abrasive, but it's so impactful. And I'm like trying to find a way to make sure that like that gets in there and then it hits hard. But you just you have to do it justice. So I'm sure like from what you're describing, it's very similar. You want to make sure that the choreography and the music are this marriage that just really does the routine justice. Because if you think about it, people are hearing and seeing both choreo and audio, and then it's just the athletes that are essentially the puppets, right? Like they're kind of acting out this play that's been given to them and taught to them. So it's really, really neat.
Yeah. And I'd love to know, and maybe this is more of a question as a hit hard, but do you ever go back and watch the finished product? Once, let's say a team is up at Cheersport or NCA, or do you ever go back and be like, oh, wow, and see how the music and the choreography and the fluff and the dance and all of it has kind of come together?
Oh yeah, 100%. And to touch base very quickly on Nick's point, you mentioned the ups and downs. Having a roller coaster of emotions, I think, is very important. And unfortunately, there's a gift and a curse. It sounds like with both of us, where our OCD just can't let us just push it out.
Right.
Like it's just like it has. We understand this, but it just has to feel right. Like you can't just force you're looking at it, you're listening to it, and it's when you know.
Yep.
And you can't just be like, oh, that's good enough. It's just it has to hit you and be like, I can move on to this. Otherwise, and the unfortunate thing, and one of the tougher things is with cheer music, is we have a really limited amount of time for we can't get hung up too much on everything. So you just have to just drink a lot of coffee and put the hours in no matter what to just make it to get it there. Because it's just
run into situations, because I do this all the time, where I'm like, some of my creative friends are like, done is better than perfect, but I get so hung up on my name is attached to this, and I would hate for one person to see this art that I've created and think, well, that kind of sucks. But lately there's been a couple times where we get back from a cheer comp and I'm trying to get an edit out because I want it to be relevant. And sometimes you just kind of have to say that, done is better than perfect. Have you ever run into a situation where you release something and in your head you're like, I don't feel 100% on that, but I know it's going to be okay. And then it goes out and then it just does phenomenal. Because that's happened to me. I'll re-release a video and I'll talk to my wife, Jessica. I'll be like, that video sucked. And then it goes out and it gets 30,000 hits on it. I'm like, but we're our own worst critic, right? Because you're a professional in music and I'm a professional in video. So we know how to critique at that level, right? That's how we critique other artists, because we have that background information. We have the knowledge and the skill set that we know what works and what doesn't. But we have to remember sometimes at the end of the day, people listening to the cheer music, and no discredit to you, and people watching my videos and no discredit to me, they're not the professionals, right? Like 9.5 out of 10 people that are watching or listening to our, creative stuff, like they're not the professionals. They think it's amazing. You know what I mean? Do you run into that situation?
Yeah. I think I run into that situation in a sense where I'll listen to something and I'll be like, and this is no disrespect to anyone, but I'll like listen to something and I'll be like, ooh, that's nothing, like that mix doesn't sound too good, or the audio quality is tough, or like this flow is really choppy. And then I'll see the comments and be like, this is the best mix ever. I'll be like, am I listening to the same thing? Like, and then I joke around with some of my producer friends. I'll be like, man, like there's people out there that send their mixes like 3 months late. And then there's mixes out there that are just like, I'll be like tweaking a sound effect for 4 hours and I'll listen to this mix and it's like real choppy and everyone's okay with it. I'm like, am I just overthinking it? Like maybe a little bit too much, but I'm trying to think.
It's what sets you apart, right? Like it really is what sets you apart. And that's something that I've had to learn is like, it just sets me apart. You have to, and I would much rather be slower and more meticulous than to be faster and choppy. Like I would much rather release less edits a year than to suffer my quality or to suffer just to get something out. Like I'm not a quantity over quality. I'm more of a quality over quantity. And sometimes these edits, I can come back and they'll take me an hour, 2 hours to do a cheer edit. I mean, if we think about it, cheer routine's 2.5 minutes. On average, if you take an on average team, I would say non-worlds, non-level 5, 6, you're getting roughly about 1 minute and 15 seconds worth of actual usable quality, like footage, right? Like getting rid of all the fluff and then getting rid of the falls and whatever else happens. And then I refine it down and keeping that attention for that period of time. But you really, you just have to decide like what's the most important thing to you. And I know that's really important to you, is really making sure that when a mix goes out, it's out into the wild. Like that's it. It's not coming back. People aren't going to hear revision. Like it's out there and that is associated and branded and a part of that team's DNA moving forward.
Yeah, no, I think we're both on the same wavelength as far as quality over quantity. I know sometimes I'm jealous because it's great for business where I know some of my friends can really rack up the amount of mixes they do per year. And I don't come anywhere close to that because I'm like, I can't move that fast. I can't just slap it and throw it out. And like, and that's not like everyone has their way. Everyone, there's no right or wrong way, but I just agree with that as far as, I only take on a certain number of mixes. So like, once the time slots are booked, we have to just say sorry, and it hurts. Like we want to take on as many people as possible, work as many people with as many people as possible. But it's just, I know if I do that, I'm going to risk one, falling severely behind. So, going back on my word on your estimated delivery date, I don't want that to happen. And two, I don't want to be rushing anyone's product. I want to give it justice each and every time. Let it be the lower ended mixes, not necessarily lower ended, but like more of like the basic, the less expensive mixes, or especially like the higher, like people, as parents, people pay good money for some of these mixes. And, it's
we
like,
know a little something about that.
Yeah. Now one thing I will say, I do offer all different ranges of prices, but certain programs, they just prefer some of those higher end ones and they're great, But now I will say that, now I will say, I think I'm, in the grand scheme of some of like the higher end custom ones, I'm pretty reasonably priced because there are some other ones that are out there and, to each their own. But no, I want to make sure that every single team, I give it justice, because ultimately, people sometimes forget, like it's about the kids. And it's like, why would I want to throw them something where they're not excited to go on the floor with? Or not, especially like a lot of times they get music and they've been practicing all summer. They're tired. They haven't competed yet. And then they get music and it's like this real big boost to morale. And it's really exciting. And I'm going to bounce back to Erica's question real quick, because I think it can also tie into something else that you mentioned about like the performance and stuff like that. But I love going to see the finished product, and I have coaches that send me videos after competition. In years past, I have always gone to competitions to watch in person. I was really upset I couldn't make it to Atlantic City this year because I really wanted to see you guys perform. All right. Is that because of Atlantic City itself or because of the performances?
Yes, Atlantic City. And you guys up north judge so differently than they do in the south. Judges in the north hate southern routines. I said it.
I don't understand. I always talk highly about your guys' routines because you guys just crush your choreography, and like I get to firsthand look at everything because I get to see all the videos.
When it's really rough.
I mean, think about who's doing our choreo too, so that's very, very helpful. But yeah, they said it was too fast paced. It was blah 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 blah. There was one routine. Where was that one? With Gravity.
Oh, with Gravity, that said that we did the best with what we had.
Yeah, the girls did the best with what they were given for a routine. Who puts that on a score sheet?
That's an interesting comment, and I've always felt different. Like I feel differently because again, I get to see the routines before a lot of like the general public does, and each year I'm always stoked for your guys' routines because one, like they are fast. I will say this, like your choreographers pack it in there. They're usually the longest routines I do each year, and typically some of the fastest that we do tempo wise.
Do you have a bingo card when all the ATA routines come in to see how many 8 counts were over?
I usually know.
No comments.
I usually know ahead of time. Like I just assume like, okay, we're ending on like 49-1, 51 for these guys for Matrix or for Voltage or that. But luckily for me, like I actually think my sound does really well at a fast pace. There's certain producers that they prefer a little bit moderate to slow pace because their styles work better with that. But for some reason, man, when I get to do you guys mixes, in some of the college teams, I get to really crank it up. Now, it's like a double-edged sword. I love the sound, but it's more work because it's a longer routine. So it's like, we have to end up making more vocals for it, more sections for it. But at the same time, I love the finished product with that. But I was trying to get to Atlantic City. I have Nick, we were talking about this. I have a 2-year-old and my wife is in her 3rd trimester. So I'm trying to, and we were also doing edit. It was like edit season. I was still doing mixes that weekend. It was tough to get out there. But usually like I'll make it to like NCA or to a summit or like one of the bigger comps a year. But the past few years with my son, with another one on the way, with buying a house and just it's been really tough to just leave far distance to go see the competitions in person. But 100%, that's like one of my favorite things to do is to see it all. And I get hyped up. And that's when I know the mix is coming along well. When I'm watching the routine that I'm mixing to. So when I'm watching, say, one of my favorite mixes this year was Voltage.
Shout out to Gigi,
that just
an ambassador. Heather was also on the podcast. So Gigi Durkee, she is on that team.
A back spot.
She's a back spot. She's an ambassador for Hit Zero Media. And her mom, Heather Durkee, was on an episode of Hit Season as well. We love Voltage.
Okay, awesome.
They always make fun of me because I call it a 4.2 instead of a 4.2. I just think 4.2 sounds so much better. But yeah, go ahead. Voltage is great.
No, that just mixed ended up being hitting so hard. Like the dubstep sections came in, my artist just rocked it. But no, when I had to I have a standing desk, so like sometimes I'll stand, sometimes I'll sit. But like if I'm sitting and like I'm watching the video and I see how this one section came together and how it sounds and how it looks, and I had to get up out of my seat and like run to the back of my studio and to get like hyped up. That's when I know, okay, we can move on from this section or this mix is going to be okay. But I love seeing the final product. I do have and sometimes when I can't go to the competitions, I'll stream it on like Varsity TV or FlowCheer. And then a lot of times we'll do that and I'll record it. Like in the past, I would literally sit there with my phone and record my computer screen and like post a story about it. Be like, amazing job, this team, amazing job, that team. And we love supporting like the teams, like the programs, because, you know, we really appreciate the fact that they, you know, give us the opportunity and they trust us to really bring the routines to life that we want to become the biggest fans of them as well. So yes, love seeing the final product. One thing though, there is a pet peeve, and Corey, if you're watching, you're not big in this, so don't worry. But a lot of times teams, they'll change the routine and not tell me. And like our mixes come with edits, and it's like, hey, hit me up. I'll fix your stunt section. And then they'll go compete at like Summit, and it like nothing goes along with it. I'm like, no, like all this work. No, don't change it and not tell me.
Oh man!
I won't tell you what's been going on for the last weekend and in the couple days leading up to last weekend. But if you tune in onto Can-Am on Varsity TV, you'll notice that things don't look the same.
Now, hey, listen. Throughout the year, it happens. Like, see, people will go to a competition, and it's like, okay, we changed the stunt section, but maybe we're going to save the edit for the bigger comps at the end of the year. So, like right now, we're heading into what we call edit season, where basically everyone's gearing up for Summit, everyone's gearing up for All-Star Worlds and Worlds and Cheer Worlds. Or the one Youth Summit. So they're doing their final routine upgrades, and then they're submitting new videos and new count sheets, and then they're getting everything. So I understand, like, throughout the season, like, hey, they might go to a competition and it's, you know, it doesn't totally go together. But I tell my clients all the time, like, just hit me up. Like, don't be afraid. Like, and a lot of times, like, different producers have different policies, but when you order a mix through Twisted Cutz, it comes with a select set of edits, you know, included. So you can use them for, and like leading up to like some of the bigger competitions. So leading up to NCA and Cheer Sport, we get hit with a bunch of edits.
Yeah.
And then leading up to the end of the year, we get hit up for a bunch of edits.
That's so smart though, to add that into your packages, knowing that is kind of coming from different gems.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, we have to do that. And it's, again, sometimes it's a double-edged sword. I don't even know if it's a double-edged sword or not, but there's certain times where like I'll get stuck on a section and I'm trying to like make this sound and look perfect. And like the real difficulty is making it all seamless. Yeah. So like you'll be listening and it all just flows together. And I know like Nick, that's how you are with like video. Like you don't, like nothing wants to like pop out or stand out. So like for me to get a moment where I want this build up to happen, they do a full up, they hit, these words have to hit there. Like I might have to start a song 4/8 counts before or 6/8 counts before to be able to transition out of it. So like there's all these different pieces that have to start somewhere to make this one moment somewhere else land perfectly. And then I'll be like, man, I'm working really hard in this one section. And they might just change it midway through the season, and it might not even go along with it anymore. It's like, man, that'd be a bummer. But there's a lot of programs where I like over the years they've learned, hey, when we do routine upgrades, we want to try to keep these moments intact.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you know, so like when we shift around some sound effects, it doesn't make a big difference. But like if you move your jump section 2/8 counts to, you know, earlier,
it's all
and
off.
I have a voiceover that's going with those double jumps. And we had songs that were purposely placed like 3 counts before to be able to transition seamlessly into that section. I can't just go take this and put it here. I have to really work a whole section to be able to do that. And that's where a lot of the difficulty comes in. And that's known as a reconstruction. And that's a whole different story compared to just an edit where, hey, we used to do an extension right here. Now we're doing a full up. Okay, now I just add a laser stutter there. Like that's completely different.
All right, so let's dive into questions that hit hard. It's a segment that we have in all of our podcasts of Hit Season. Rapid fire. Typically, they're like one-word answers, yes, no's, that sort of stuff, and we're gonna let you have it. You want to kick it off?
Okay. Right. So, what's your first response when a coach says, "I hate it, I don't like it"? What do you do?
Deflated.
There you go.
Yeah.
Favorite sound effect to use in a cheer track?
Probably bass growls. It's the best way to kind of explain it.
When you are creating the dance section, that last 8 count or 2 8 counts, what is the very first thing you start with? How do you start that?
Deciding which content to use, and then really just watching the video over and over again and adjusting it to make it shine and be as aggressive and energetic as possible.
Okay, twofold question. Can you still tumble?
I doubt it.
Okay, second, part B. What was your favorite tumble pass that you could do when back in your prime?
Just simple round off tuck, standing tucks. Like we were more UCA, so the guys were more focused on just stunting versus NCA with a lot of the flash and like the real big passes and stuff like that. So we didn't dance. We didn't really do a lot of tumbling. We stunted almost the entire routine.
Do you prefer like the themes, or do you just prefer to just be able to go out there and have creative liberty?
I prefer themes at the end of the process. And the reason being is because once the theme is finalized, it's so much fun and always so different, but it's twice as hard to create.
All right. I have 2 more questions.
Okay, you go. Finish it out.
All right. First question. You've made mention a couple times that you really like voltage. Is that your favorite ATA routine that you've made audio for this season? If not, which one is it? And choose wisely. If it's a J1 or a J2 team or a Y2 team, you're probably in the right ballpark.
Well, all the ATA mixes, especially like the full original ones, they were some of my favorites each and every year. So like Voltage is really cool. I really like Vortex. But there's a couple ones that stand out. One of my favorite ones this year, and it was one of my favorite ones from last year, it's a team called Long Island Cheer, and the program called Long Island Cheer, and their team is Diamonds. It's their world teams. And the theme is the first time doing this theme this year, and it turned out super fun. They did a Clueless theme. And that's one of my favorite mixes this year. And last year they did a Mean Girls theme. It was the first time doing Mean Girls, and that turned out to be a lot of fun. But their routine this year, if you guys, I can even send it to you. We have it released on YouTube right now. It's a whole lot of fun. And one thing, and I know this is kind of like pausing on rapid fire, but with themes, certain themes, we have to do a lot of research for. So when they said we want to do Clueless, I sat down, and my wife is a big Clueless fan. She loves that movie. And we sat down together, and I watched Clueless for like the first time. I've never watched it as a kid, and I just sat there and took a billion notes. And
that's awesome.
We went through it, and we tried to do like just chronological order of just like how the movie unfolds within the mix. Did that with Mean Girls last year. I've done that with a whole bunch of different themes. We did one for Hercules. I had to watch Hercules, and 101 Dalmatians. I had to watch that again. And yeah, we always do a ton of research for specific mixes, specific themes like that. But that one I recommend checking out. Twisted Cutz, just youtube.com/Twisted Cutz. You'll see all those out there. You'll also see all the ATA ones that were released with the lyric videos. But Long Island Cheer Diamonds, Long Island Cheer Titanium is a really cool one. Blue Storm Athletics. I did a baseball theme this year, which was a lot of fun. Nick, you might like this one mix for Cheer Force Arkansas Falcons.
Okay.
It's a rock theme. And it's very similar. When the first year I worked with Corey was when they were Rockstar Cheer Lake Norman.
Yeah.
And I had one team called Twisted Sister.
Yep.
And it was, and I was like, man, this is the first time working with Rockstar Cheer. The team is called Twisted Sister. I love rock. I want to make this sound like a Twisted Sister mix. And we base it all off Twisted Sister music. And it's the mix for Falcons is very similar to that, where we created all like the guitar instrumentation, and it sounds like a rock concert, like an actual rock band. But yeah, so those are just a handful of mixes. Sorry it took so long to answer that.
No, you're fine. All right, last question, then we're going to wrap it up. Do you believe the hype?
100%. Always,
I figured
every
that would
single
be the
year.
answer. Alex, thank you so
Every
much for
single year.
coming on. This has been a wealth of information. We've been really trying over this course of the season of Hit Season to really just bring different perspectives and aspects of cheer because there's so much of it. And a lot of people just pay the bills. And sometimes they want to know, like, when they're paying the bills, what's going on behind the scenes? Or, you know, when I hear something, what does that mean? And so this has been awesome. We really appreciate all your time, especially during busy season for sure. And everybody go and check out Alex's stuff with Twisted Cutz, youtube.com/Twisted Cutz. You're on Instagram. Where else can they find you?
Pretty much everywhere. So like YouTube, and it's all pretty much at Twisted Cutz. So youtube.com/Twisted Cutz, soundcloud.com/Twisted Cutz, TikTok at Twisted Cutz, Instagram, Facebook. I'm trying to remember
all
if
the
Twitter,
socials.
X. Yeah, pretty much at Twisted Cutz. Pretty soon, I would say hopefully, it all depends on the process and everything like that, and I guess getting approved. You might be able to start listening to a lot of it on a lot of Twisted Cutz on Spotify and Apple Music, including ATA mixes and stuff like that. So you'll be able to stream us there as well.
Awesome. And as always, if you're looking to watch an episode of Hit Season, we are on Spotify and YouTube. We appreciate the support, Alex. We look forward to hearing your music once again this weekend at Can-Am down in Myrtle Beach. And then we'll hear it very quickly after that when we go to One Up in Nashville. And then as we get ready for end of year events with Regional Summit for our youth teams and the Summit for all of our junior and senior teams. So we appreciate it, not only joining Hit Season, but as parents of athletes on ATA, in behalf of them, we appreciate the amount of effort and creative ability that you bring to our teams. The girls get so fired up when they hear our music, and you're a big part of the success for sure.
No, thank you guys for taking the time and giving me the opportunity to come on your guys' podcast, and best of luck to you guys and all of ATA for the rest of the year. I'll be rooting for you, and I'll talk to Corey about some edits before Summit.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. That was the last episode of Hit Season. This past episode was with Alex from Twisted Cutz. What an awesome, cool opportunity just to kind of hear behind the scenes.
Yes, absolutely. And so interesting to hear all the things that really go into making the music and what that involves.
And hopefully that brings perspective to all the parents, including myself, when you're like, where is our music? It takes time, people. It doesn't just happen overnight. So until then, we'll see you next time on the mat. See ya.